Today, we're pulling for the Mexican with Dodger blue on. But, Dad, we have our Giants hats on. Shut up. Put those away. Fernando.
Fernando Valenzuela's artistry on the mound left a lasting impression on LA's Latino community and fans of Major League Baseball. But the pitcher has also been amused to musicians, artists, and writers who have featured Valenzuela in song, on stage, and in paintings. During Valenzuela's 1981 rookie season, Barbara Carrasco was commissioned by the LA Community Redevelopment Agency, in conjunction with the city's Bicentennial Committee, to create a mural for LA's 200th birthday.
I was only 26 years old at the time. I was an employee of the CRA. I was doing topographical maps. And then one of the architects approached me and asked me if I would like to do a mural about anything to do with LA. And for some reason, I thought the history would be a really good thing to focus in on, because I hadn't seen a history of Los Angeles murals. So that's how it started. The size of the mural is 16 feet high by 80 feet long. So it's the chronological history of Los Angeles in a woman's hair. The woman is sort of the mythical queen of Los Angeles. She has a braid on her head instead of a crown. A lot of the people that are in the mural, there's a lot of different individuals that some are famous, some are not famous, but some have played a role in the Los Angeles community. I was sort of honoring them by doing their portrait, actually capturing a little bit of their contributions to the city's history.
As Carrasco created her mural, Valenzuela was just starting to leave his own mark on Los Angeles.
In the course of writing this, doing the history of the mural, my mother and I met Fernando Valenzuela at a fundraiser, and my mother approached him and told him, my daughter did a mural, she would like to include you as part of the history of Los Angeles. And he was like such a nice guy, real humble guy. I was real happy that he said yes. I really felt like he was someone to really pay homage to, and acknowledge his role in LA history.
The 80-foot mural, LA History, A Mexican Perspective, is in the permanent collection at the LA Museum of Natural History. While Carrasco wasn't too much of a baseball fan growing up, musician Steve Wynn was obsessed with the game as a kid in West LA. But he hated the Dodgers.
But the Reds also were just flat out exciting. Before Pete Rose was tarnished by everything that happened afterwards, he was an exciting player, and Joe Morgan, the whole team was exciting. And the Dodgers were just, to me, not an exciting team. Steve Garvey was as far away from rock and roll as you could possibly get. Steve Garvey and Bill Russell was so, staid, white bread, kind of boring, factory tested kind of ball players. It wasn't my thing. It didn't fit into what I was into.
That all changed in 1981 when Wynn got swept up in Fernandomania.
Like most people from LA, I grew up to the sound of Vin Scully. That was like the greatest sound in the world to me. So I listened to games all the time. And I remember driving around in the spring of '81, hearing him call those games. And I think appreciating LA now as an adult, suddenly being able to drive around and know the city better and know the landscape of the city and the character of the city and all the diversity of the city with the story of what was happening with Fernando, and seeing the way that he was embraced by so many people, different backgrounds, different nationalities, different interests, different histories, everything. To see that happening was exciting. It was intoxicating. And I'm sure for a lot of people now, and I would say those first 2 or 3 months of the '81 season made me fall back in love with Los Angeles, become a Dodger fan, and become obsessed with Fernando. It was really had a huge impact on me.
Over his career, Wynn has covered lots of musical terrain in bands like the Dream Syndicate and Gutterball. And in 2007, he co-founded the Baseball Project, in which his day job mashes up with his love for the national pastime. The band has released 3 albums of baseball-oriented rock. Wynn also wrote Fernando, which serves as a theme song for this series.
Fernando, that was like one of the things I said, well, if I ever do this thing, which I really want to do, if I ever find this way to kind of write a rock album of ball players, if nothing else because he meant so much to me at that one moment. He so defined an excitement that I felt, that other people felt. Over the course of my time in LA and ever since, and of course, even in recent times, seeing, anti-immigration legislation trying to be passed, it made me think about this timeline from 1960 when families' homes were razed to build Dodger Stadium. The Mexican family's entire community was wiped out, to 20 years later, Fernando being beloved by an entire city, to where we were in years before, since, and when I wrote the song, to see a typical thing where people have no problem with people of color or people of certain nationalities if they're in show business or in sports, but the second it turns to day-to-day life or politics, suddenly have a whole different story. So it was a lot to cover in a 3-minute song, but I wanted to do that. I speak Spanish, and I learned at a young age, so I'm, if not fluent, pretty close. And so I had the idea, I'd really like to write the song in Spanish. I'm proud of the song. I think I kind of managed to nail that whole timeline in 3 verses pretty decently.
Valenzuela appears as an apparition in playwright Judy Who's digital production, Sandi Koto of the San Gabriel Valley, about a teenage pitcher who wants to learn to throw the screwball.
She comes from a long baseball family who is steeped in the Japanese-American baseball leagues, and Sandi wants to learn the screwball because her dad do it, her great-granddad do it, and she wants to learn from one of the best, which is Fernando. That's his signature pitch.
Who remembers watching Valenzuela pitch on TV as a kid in New Mexico.
We would sort of cheer his wind-up because it was sort of this crazy, chaotic, look up at the sky, go for broke wind-up. I always thought when he was looking at the sky, he was looking at the heavens, at God for inspiration, for that little bit extra kick.
Valenzuela was never far from Who's mind when writing Sandi Koto.
I think Sandi found a kindred spirit in Fernando, that they're both outsiders. She was playing a game as a girl, and a game that does not allow girl pitchers so much. He was such an outsider that he made baseball interesting. I guess he's a special, unique individual. He's one of the pitchers of that era who was a standout, and it was one of the greats, and I think she wanted to touch that sort of greatness.
Richard Montoya grew up in Northern California rooting for the Giants, but Valenzuela's starts became must-watch events in his home.
The nation was mesmerized. And my father, a good enough baseball man and a poet and an activist and a Chicano artist, was well aware something was happening and that we needed to be watching it. It was like watching midnight mass on Christmas Eve, where, it's hushed, sit, nobody talk, nobody move. Today we're pulling for the Mexican with Dodger blue on. But Dad, we have our Giants hats on. Shut up, put those away.
When Montoya relocated to LA with the performance troupe Culture Clash, he began researching the story of the residents in Bishop, La Loma, and Palo Verde. The end result was the 2003 play Chavez Ravine.
Chavez Ravine is one of our landmark pieces that looks at the complications of a growing, hungry city, and a city that wanted and needed baseball and the neighborhood that the stadium sits in. It was idyllic, beautiful homes for hundreds of children, hundreds of families, servicemen, servicewomen, ball players. We met people that told us, I was born behind second base. When my brother was born, the sobadora, the midwife lady, placed our umbilical cords under third base. And we always imagined that those spirits and those people that lost homes and lived there, whose umbilical cords were buried deep in the infield, were either communicating, helping, or cursing the Dodgers since the time of Fernando. But we'd always imagined that Fernando could be in communication with that sort of Mexican heart that beats at mid infield. It's about church, it's about people. It's about Fernando Valenzuela, it's about comedy.
It's about Walter O'Malley.
And poetry.
The barrios, the homes, the people scattered into dark oblivion. The city pushing down on the heart of memory.
In Chavez Ravine, Valenzuela serves as a flashpoint, a symbol of both the past and the future.
At the beginning of the play Chavez Ravine, we find Fernando is on the mound. Vince Scully is noting that Fernando looks a little shaky on his feet. He seems to be talking to nobody near the second base, and the nobody are spirits that are talking to him in mid-conversation with Fernando. And we follow Fernando in the play through the 9 innings. We pick up, in the 6th, the mid-7th, the stretch, and the final inning of the shutout, which we claim as a spiritual and ritualistic moment for Mexicans of this town, for the city of LA, for the Dodgers, and for Fernando. It's kind of a thank you to Fernando too. It's not a put down whatsoever. And really an embrace and an acknowledgement, a thank you for a practical, humble Mexican kid that comes to this town and turns it upside down.
Their modes of expression may be different, but for each of these artists, Fernando Valenzuela has been a revelation.
I mean, people were so proud of this guy without knowing him personally, of course. But I felt proud of him too. That this guy was being, receiving all these accolades and praise for being a really great athlete.
You want to cheer for the underdog, and he wasn't necessarily a bonus baby who was supposed to be great and had to live up to that. Kind of came out of nowhere, and I think it was people excited to see this impossible thing happening. This is really unlikely stories. For something to come along like Fernando Valenzuela that really united a whole city, that made everybody across the city think about this one subject, this one guy, and just dumbfounded by where this came from and where it was going, was pretty exciting.
The way he saw the game, the way he felt the game really was special. And I think that's what we got intuitively. We got his passion, I think. That's what was really special. We got his passion.
Fernandomania was a mania. We lost ourselves for a shining summer, for a fantastic moment. Mexicans are no longer in the background of LA. The East Side is not just gazing at the West Side. Mexicans are in the foreground. The focus is Fernando.